Most people who walked past Marcus Stone, Garrett saw the scars first. The thick rope of damaged tissue running from his jawline to his collarbone, the burns that had turned his left arm into a patchwork of healed skin, and the steel brace barely visible beneath his jeans where his knee had been rebuilt with pins and rods. They saw the leather vest with the iron wool's patch, the boots that hit pavement like hammers, and the kind of presence that made conversation stop when he entered a room. What they didn't see was the decade of physical therapy, the nights he still woke up smelling smoke, or the quiet truth that bravery wasn't something he'd chosen. It was something that had been beaten into him by circumstance and survived only because giving up felt worse. But on a cold Saturday morning at Miller's roadside diner off Highway 9, a 12-year-old boy in a wheelchair looked past all of that and saw something else entirely. Something that would lead to a question Stone had never been asked before, and an answer that would change both of their lives in ways neither could predict. The diner smelled like burnt coffee and frying bacon as Stone sat alone in his usual corner booth, back to the wall, scanning the room out of habit. The morning crowd was thin, a couple of truckers at the counter, a waitress named Diane refilling mugs, and near the window, a woman helping a boy transfer from a wheelchair into a booth seat. Stone noticed the kid immediately. 12, maybe 13. Thin frame, legs motionless beneath worn jeans. The kind of careful movements that spoke of a body that didn't cooperate the way it should. The boy's mother, exhausted eyes, hands that moved with practiced efficiency, settled him into the booth before folding the wheelchair and setting it aside. Stone looked away. Other people's struggles weren't his business. But 20 minutes later, when Stone stood to leave, the boy's voice cut across the diner, clear and determined. "Excuse me, sir?" Stone turned. The kid was looking directly at him. "Can I ask you something?" Stone hesitated, then walked over slowly. Up close, he could see the boy's hands trembling slightly against the table. Nervous, but not backing down. "What's on your mind?" Stone asked quietly. The boy glanced at his mother, who gave a small nod, then looked back at Stone with an intensity that caught him off guard. "Can you teach me how to be brave like you?" The question hung in the air like something fragile. Stone blinked, momentarily thrown. Around them, the diner had gone quiet. "Kid, I don't. Please," the boy pressed. His voice cracked slightly. "I see how people look at you. They're scared, but you're not. You don't apologize for being here. I want to know how you do that." Stone studied the boy's face, the desperation barely hidden beneath the surface, the raw need in his eyes. This wasn't curiosity. This was survival. The mother spoke softly. "I'm sorry, he shouldn't." "No," Stone said, cutting her off gently. He pulled out a chair and sat down across from the boy. "What's her name?" "Ethan. Ethan Cole." "Ethan, why do you think you need to be brave?" The boy's jaw tightened. "Because I'm starting middle school Monday. New school. And everybody's going to stare at the kid in the wheelchair. They're going to whisper. Some of them are going to be cruel." His voice dropped. "I'm terrified." Stone recognized that fear. He'd lived it. "How'd it happen?" Stone asked, nodding toward Ethan's legs. "Car accident. 2 years ago. Spinal injury." Ethan's hands clenched into fists. "Doctors said I'd never walk again. My dad left 6 months later. Said he couldn't handle having a broken son." The mother's face went pale. "Ethan." "It's true, Mom." Ethan looked back at Stone. "So I figured if I have to live like this, I should at least learn how to be strong. And when I saw you walk in here, I thought maybe you'd understand." Stone was quiet for a long moment. Then he leaned forward. "You know what real bravery is, Ethan? It's not about not being scared. It's about being absolutely terrified and showing up anyway." He tapped the table. "You're sitting here asking a stranger for help because you're scared of Monday. That's brave. It doesn't feel brave. It never does." Stone pulled back his sleeve, revealing the worst of the burned scars. "House fire. 10 years ago. I went back inside for my daughter. Got her out. Barely got myself out." He paused. "Spent 2 years learning to walk again. And every single day, I was terrified I wouldn't make it." Ethan stared at the scars. "But you did make it. Because I showed up. Every single day." Stone met the boy's eyes. "You want to learn how to be brave? I'll teach you. But it's not going to be easy." Ethan's face lit up with something Stone hadn't seen there before. Hope. "When do we start?" Stone glanced at the mother, who looked uncertain but didn't object. "Tomorrow. 6 a.m. You know where the old community center is on Pope Street?" Ethan nodded quickly. "Meet me there." Stone stood, his shadow falling across the table. And Ethan, bring your fear. Because that's what we're going to work with. As Stone walked out of the diner, he didn't know yet that the boy sitting behind him was about to face something far worse than middle school hallways. Or that the lesson and courage Stone had just agreed to teach would soon become the most important thing either of them had ever learned. The old community center on Polk Street hadn't been used for much in years, just a boxing gym that opened sporadically and a storage room for folding chairs nobody claimed. But when Stone pushed through the doors at 5:45 Sunday morning, he found Ethan already waiting in the parking lot, his mother's car idling nearby. The kid looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept. "You're early," Stone said. "Couldn't sleep." Ethan maneuvered his wheelchair toward the entrance. "Kept thinking about tomorrow." Stone held the door. "Good. Fear keeps you sharp." Inside, the gym was cold and smelled like old sweat and rubber mats. Stone flipped on the overhead lights, and the space came to life. A boxing ring in the center, weight benches along the walls, and a row of heavy bags hanging from chains. Ethan looked around uncertainly. "I thought we were going to talk about mental stuff. Confidence. How to handle bullies." "We are." Stone walked to the nearest heavy bag and steadied it. But confidence doesn't come from thinking about being strong. It comes from being strong. So we're going to build it. For the next hour, Stone put Ethan through a workout designed around what his body could do. Punches from the wheelchair, arm strength exercises, core work that didn't require legs. Stone didn't go easy on him, and he didn't offer pity. "Again," Stone said as Ethan's fist connected weakly with the back. "I'm tired." "Again." Ethan hit it harder. "Again." Harder still, frustration pouring into the punch. "There it is." Stone stepped back. "That anger? That's fuel. Use it." By the time they finished, Ethan was drenched in sweat, breathing hard. But something had shifted in his posture. He sat straighter. "Tomorrow," Stone said, "when somebody stares at you, remember this. Remember that you showed up when you didn't have to. That you pushed through when it hurt. That's more than most people ever do." Ethan nodded slowly. "What if they say something cruel?" Stone crouched down to eye level. "Then you look them in the eye and remember you're tougher than anything they can say. You've survived worse than words." The next morning, Stone got a text from Ethan's mother. He went to school. Didn't say much. Seemed nervous but determined. "Thank you." Stone didn't respond. He just hoped the kid would hold on to what they'd worked on. But at 2:37 that afternoon, his phone rang. Ethan's mother, her voice shaking. "Something happened. Ethan's in the hospital." Stone's chest went tight. "What happened?" "There was an incident at school. Some boys," her voice broke. "They pushed his wheelchair down a stairwell." Stone's vision went red. "Is he okay?" "Broken wrist. Bruised ribs. He's stable, but," she was crying now, "he's asking for you. He won't talk to anyone else." Stone was already moving toward his bike. "Which hospital?" 20 minutes later, Stone walked into Ethan's hospital room. The boy lay in bed, his left wrist in a cast, his face bruised. But what hit Stone hardest was the look in Ethan's eyes, defeated. "Hey," Stone said quietly. Ethan didn't respond at first. Then, barely a whisper, "I tried to be brave. Like you said." "What happened?" "3 guys cornered me after second period. Started making jokes. Calling me wheels, saying I was taking up space." Ethan's voice wavered. "I told them to back off. Look them in the eye, just like you taught me. And they laughed. And then one of them kicked the brake loose on my chair. I went backwards down the stairs." Ethan looked away. Being brave didn't work. Stone pulled the chair close. "You're wrong." "How?" "I'm in a hospital bed." "Being brave doesn't mean you won't get hurt, Ethan. It means you don't let the hurt define you." Stone leaned forward. "Those boys. They're cowards. It took 3 of them to go after one kid in a wheelchair. That's not strength. That's fear." "Fear of what?" "Of you." Stone's voice was steady. "You scare them because you don't apologize for existing. Because you showed up and refused to shrink. Cowards can't stand that." Ethan's eyes filled with tears. "I don't want to go back." "I know." Stone was quiet for a moment. Then, "But you will. And this time, you won't go alone." Ethan looked up. "What do you mean?" "You'll see." The next morning, when Ethan's mother pulled into the school drop-off lane, her hands froze on the steering wheel. Parked in a line along the curb were 12 motorcycles. And standing beside them, arms crossed, leather vests gleaming in the morning sun, were 12 members of the Iron Wolves Motorcycle Club. At the front stood Stone. Ethan stared in disbelief as Stone walked over and opened the car door. "Ready?" Stone asked. Ethan nodded slowly. Stone helped him into the wheelchair, then turned to the other bikers. They fell into formation, 6 on each side, as Ethan rolled toward the school entrance. Every student in the parking lot stopped and stared. Conversations died. The 3 boys who had pushed Ethan down the stairs stood frozen near the flagpole, their faces pale. Stone walked beside Ethan the entire way to the front doors. Just before they reached the entrance, he leaned down and said quietly, "Bravery isn't about being fearless, kid. It's about knowing you're not alone." Ethan looked up at him, tears streaming down his face. But he was smiling. The hallways of Lincoln Middle School had never been quiet during morning arrival. But that Tuesday, silence followed Ethan Cole like a shadow. Students pressed against lockers as he rolled past, flanked by Stone on one side and 2 other Iron Wolves members on the other. No one spoke. No one laughed. The usual chaos of shouts and slamming lockers had been replaced by a tense, watchful stillness. At the main office, Principal Dawson was waiting, her expression hovering between gratitude and concern. She'd been briefed on what happened, had expelled the 3 boys involved, and had personally called Ethan's mother to apologize. But she hadn't expected this. "Mr. Garrett," she said carefully, "I appreciate you escorting Ethan, but we can take it from here." Stone nodded. "Understood. Just wanted to make sure he got inside safely." Ethan looked up at Stone, panic flickering across his face. "You're leaving?" Stone crouched down. "You don't need me here, Ethan. You've got this." What if nothing?" Stone's voice was firm but kind. "You already proved you're brave. Now you just have to keep showing up. That's all bravery ever is, showing up, one day at a time." Ethan swallowed hard, then nodded. Stone stood and looked at Principal Dawson. "If anything happens to this kid, you call me." "Immediately." She nodded quickly. "Of course." As Stone and the other bikers walked out, Ethan sat alone in the hallway for a moment, his hands gripping the armrests of his wheelchair. Then he took a deep breath and rolled toward his first period classroom. Inside, heads turned. Whispers started. But Ethan didn't shrink. He rolled to his assigned spot, locked his chair, and pulled out his notebook. And when the girl sitting next to him leaned over and quietly said, "That was really cool, what those bikers did," Ethan allowed himself a small smile. "Yeah," he said. "It was." The weeks that followed weren't easy. There were still stares, still awkward moments. But something fundamental had shifted. Ethan showed up every day. He joined the school's adaptive sports program. He started raising his hand in class. And slowly, carefully, he began to build friendships with kids who saw past the wheelchair. Every Sunday, he still met Stone at the community center. The workouts got harder. The conversations got deeper. Stone taught him how to throw a proper punch, how to strengthen his core, how to sit with fear without letting it control him. But more than that, Stone taught him something he hadn't realized he'd needed. What it meant to have someone believe in you when you stopped believing in yourself. One Sunday, 3 months after that first meeting in the diner, Ethan asked the question that had been building inside him for weeks. "Why did you help me? You didn't know me. I was just some random kid." Stone set down the weight he'd been holding. "You want the real answer?" Ethan nodded. "Because 10 years ago, when I was lying in a hospital bed after the fire, I didn't think I'd ever walk again. I didn't think I'd ever be anything but broken." Stone's voice was steady, but there was weight behind it. "And a physical therapist named Carla spent 6 months teaching me how to stand again. Not because she had to, because she saw something in me I couldn't see in myself." He looked at Ethan. "When you asked me how to be brave, I heard myself 10 years ago, and I figured if someone did it for me, I could do it for you." Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I want to do that someday. Help someone the way you helped me." Stone smiled. "Then you're already braver than you think." By the time spring arrived, Ethan had become a fixture at the community center. Other kids started showing up, some with disabilities, some without, all looking for the same thing Ethan had found, a place where showing up mattered more than being perfect. Stone didn't charge anyone. He just opened the doors every Sunday and let them work. On the last Sunday before summer break, Ethan rolled into the gym and found Stone waiting with something unexpected. "A certificate." "What's this?" Ethan asked. "Official Iron Wolves honorary membership," Stone said. "Youngest person we've ever given one to." Ethan stared at the certificate, his name printed in bold letters beneath the club's emblem. His throat went tight. I didn't earn this. You absolutely did. Stone's voice was firm. You faced your fear. You showed up when it would have been easier to hide. And you helped other kids find their courage too. That's what we do. That's what this patch means. Ethan looked up, tears streaming down his face. Thank you. Stone rested a hand on the boy's shoulder. Thank you, kid. You reminded me why I do this. That night, Ethan sat at the dinner table with his mother and carefully pinned the certificate to the wall of their small apartment. It hung beside a photo of him from before the accident, a picture of a boy who didn't know yet what he was capable of surviving. But now, looking at that certificate, Ethan understood something Stone had been trying to teach him all along. Bravery wasn't something you were born with. It wasn't something you found in a moment of crisis. It was something you built, one choice at a time, one day at a time, with the help of people who refused to let you disappear. And as Ethan sat there, staring at the emblem of the Iron Wolves, he realized he wasn't the same boy who'd been terrified to start middle school. He wasn't the boy who thought his life was over because his legs didn't work. He was someone stronger. Someone who had learned that courage wasn't about never falling. It was about getting back up, every single time, no matter how hard the fall. And he'd learned it from a scarred biker who understood better than anyone that the bravest thing a person could ever do was simply refuse to give up. Outside, the sound of motorcycles rumbled past the apartment complex, Stone and the Iron Wolves heading out for an evening ride. Ethan listened until the sound faded into the distance, then turned back to the certificate on the wall. He was ready for whatever came next, because now he knew bravery wasn't something you had to find. It was something you built, one day at a time.